Hey guys, welcome back again. Hope you guys are doing well. This is the 14th podcast of the YTCA. My name is Nick,
My name is Theo.
My name is Ezra.
and we have our guest Josh with us. Would you like to introduce
Hello,
yourself?
my name is Joshua Vaughn. I go to North Hollywood High School and I joined Nick and them through their YTCA meetings.
Yeah, Josh is actually one of the members that come consistently to our small group meetings, which we held once a week. You can talk about that if you want.
Yeah, yeah, if you don't know, we hold small group meetings where we, just talk and try to interact with like new people every week to kind of, because the pandemic has been pretty lonesome and isolating, getting to see people even once a week
Yeah,
has always been pretty nice. So we try to, um, just create a casual, comfortable space for people to interact and have fun.
definitely. And so, don't forget to check out our small group if you haven't. Also, we have an Instagram down below. If you guys want to follow it, you guys are free to. We'll be updating you guys on all colors for a podcast or any other ideas that we're doing. Also, you guys can check out our website as well, which will put a lot of useful links and a useful information there as well. All right. I guess enough talk about everything else. We'll jump straight into this week's topic, which is fulfillment. Right. Fulfillment is an idea that is very broad, right? There's a lot of things that can be said about fulfillment. So I guess we'll nail it down for you guys, and we'll start out with saying what constitutes fulfillment. What is fulfillment?
I think fulfillment, yeah, like you said, it's a pretty complex idea, but I think in a sense, fulfillment can be a sense of success or be a sense of self worth, when you feel fulfilled, when you feel like you're doing something meaningful or doing something that you believe is right, you feel fulfilled, right? And you feel like, man, like I want to keep doing this. I want to continue to either whether it's like success in like academics or maybe you're helping someone out or maybe you just feel really productive during your day. That I think those are all indicators of fulfillment. But yeah, it's kind of the feeling of you're satisfied with what you're doing.
Yeah, that's definitely right. I think it can come in several different forms. One thing I think is a really good definition would be kind of like long-term happiness, like what really fulfills you and like what makes you really happy, to put it simply. And as I've said before, there's a lot of ways to do that. Some people find it in, achieving something, like maybe I'm really good at playing the drums, or some people find it in like, I guess doing something, right? Like, oh, I really like playing video games and this makes me feel pretty happy. And then there's like a third category, which is like, helping other people. Of course, we'll go more into that. Do you want to say something, Joshua?
Yeah, for fulfillment, I'm going to read a Machiavelli quote. Niccolo Machiavelli wrote The Prince, so he was very focused on what rulers should be doing in their lives and what roles they should play in other people's lives. On when he talks about time and death, he says he alludes time to grains of sand, saying that the more sand has escaped from the hourglass of our life, the clearer we should see through it. He believes, and a lot of other people believe, that death gives life meaning. How since because we're here on a limited time, right? That we have we are forced to confront our own feelings and what fulfills us, what is our purpose in life, both in the long term and the short term. Like Theo said, everyone has different types of fulfillment that they like to achieve, and everyone's priorities are different. But I feel like one unifying factor for most humans is that death is sort of a timer for us that forces us to confront what is fulfilling to us.
It's pretty interesting actually because when I don't know about you, but I don't often I don't often think about death. Um, But it is interesting to think about, yeah, how like, our time is limited, and even though we we may not feel it, as high schoolers, or hopefully whoever's watching, um, like maybe you think about death a lot, maybe you don't, but I think personally, when you think about the idea of, your time is limited and you should be spending it wisely, I think is something that almost slips my mind sometimes, when we're going through the mundane kind of processes of school, or like, eating, or even like, just doing like habitual things like brushing your teeth, or like like reading a book, or whatever they may be for you. um when you keep doing the same things over and over again without kind of that understanding that your time is limited, or that you're really spending your time wisely. I think when you're just going through the motions and not really thinking about it, I think that sometimes can be a way to not feel fulfilled. I think when you are just doing the mundane actions of life, because like I mean, I don't know about you, but like I don't feel like the most fulfilled when I brush my teeth or like put on my clothes. That's just kind of like a normal thing. And I know that that may sound like a bit, I guess, privileged, because people like around the world don't have clothes and food to eat. But I think because they've become such a like a normal part of my life, if I'm not thinking about it, and if I'm not being grateful for it, or if I'm not um, understanding like the significance of my actions, then it stops being fulfilling.
Yeah, I think I could definitely relate to that. I think the idea of fulfillment is, again, I think it's subjective to the people, right? You might enjoy something, or something might fulfill you, and might not fulfill me, right? Let's just say some people, like, I sometimes think I take enjoyment in exercising. You know, that I know I'm taking care of my body, right? That's something that I find fulfillment in. And, fulfillment is important even during the pandemic, right? We need to find things that we enjoy in to kind of help her to kind of boost our mentalities, right? Because I think, with the correct, with the right amount of fulfillment, the good amount of fulfillment, right? You can really help yourself go through the tougher times. However, I think sometimes some people take fulfillment in wrong things, right? In relation to the wrong things, right? Let's just say this person, I don't know, takes fulfillment in making fun of others. This person takes his fulfillment by cheating, right? Those are, yes, they still take fulfillment. No one said they don't take fulfillment off of that. They just take a fulfillment off of different things. So, I think those situations, right, if we think about it, those situations are not really the correct fulfillment that we think. What do you guys think about that? Would you guys still call that fulfillment, or do you guys think that's not really a fulfillment at that point?
I think that when it comes to fulfillment and the question, what if, we often ask each other or ask ourselves, sorry, based upon our actions, whether we should do things on societal programming. So, like, for example, this sort of analysis is helpful because when we were taught when we were younger that we shouldn't touch fire, we shouldn't play with knives, right? We had that intuition to not do those things. Even though those things aren't necessarily fulfillment things, they're based off of societal expectations. And over time, we can start to realize that our actions are guided by the usually unrealistic, pessimistic, or programmed expectations by the society we live in, whether it's from our peers, our teachers, our parents, etc. Right? Of course, this is sort of like an exaggeration to a point because everyone has their own free will, but generally, we're as humans extremely good at doing the things that we feel comfortable with and society feels comfortable with because we like to place the expectation of fitting in as a human instinct. Obviously, there are definite outliers, and this isn't a mold that fits anyone, but everyone. But talking specifically in your case, I feel like it's at the bottom line, no matter societal implications, no matter whether you're at the under the thumb of society based off of what you want to do, we're really good at deciding to do what we want to do. even if it's at like the detriment of others sometimes. So that's something that I would agree with.
I think that's a really good point that, we are kind of shaped by the expectations of society and how we perceive society, because not everyone perceives society the same way. What may seem normal or casual to one person may be completely ridiculous to another. um, I actually read an article for an English assignment about kind of the swiftness at which public opinion changes nowadays, and in it how they kind of covered how opinions and biases don't change like super quick like that. It's more of the perspective that people look at society at. For example, like when same-sex marriage was legalized, right? While the general public, or at least some of the general public, believed that same-sex marriage was wrong, you know, things got a little more heated because with the passing of the law, suddenly societal context changed for them, right? They saw like everyone, like I am part of the minority, that the majority of people support same-sex marriage, and that thus, like um, people got, as people do, people get kind of angry, people sometimes even riot and whatnot, and in a sense, that can be a sense of fulfillment to them because they feel like they are defending their sort of um, own beliefs and own rights. But at the same time, it's also a bit weird because like nothing really changed. I mean, yes, there were new laws that were passed, but at the same time, like social uh, construct and social culture don't change like that, right? It's sort of the shift in perspective that changes rather than the actual notions and actual beliefs.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Joshua. Go.
okay, thank you. I would agree with your assertion, Ezra, just as a quick bolstering of your statement,
Mm,
because this was especially prevalent through the Emancipation Proclamation, right? Even though slavery ended during the Civil War, the rise of Jim Crow and other prejudiced laws and legislation pressed against African Americans and other minorities, especially with nativist sentiments throughout the Industrial Revolution, the mindset, no matter the legislation, it still remained with the people,
mhm.
especially due to the immediate rise of sharecropping, which is another form of slavery. So it definitely needs time to change. It's not an immediate change, just like you said.
Yeah.
I would like to back up a little bit. I know that we talked about how perspectives and societal standards kind of determine what constitutes fulfillment, but I would like to go pretty basic here. Now, you may have heard Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it's basically a pyramid that shows what people actually need. Now, this actually gets bigger as you get older. I'll give you a small breakdown of it. So on the bottom of the pyramid is physiological needs, food and water. Now think about it. If I didn't eat or drink for a while, I probably wouldn't be happy at all, right? So that's kind of
Yeah.
basic, right? So we need food and water and like yeah. But then, as you get older, you need safety needs, right? You have to feel safe, you have to feel secure. If you don't feel those things, there's like no possible chance that you can feel fulfilled, right?
Mm,
And then there's belongingness and love needs, which, this constitutes relationships and friends. Now, this is important, right? Because, our friends make us feel fulfilled, right? They give us, a sense of purpose and maybe even a sense of duty, right? To help each other. Now, if we go beyond that, there's something called esteem needs. Now, this is like feeling, a sense of accomplishment, like, oh, I've actually done something really worthful in my life. Now, that I'm pretty sure could help people feel fulfilled, right? And then there's this really ambiguous one. It's called self actualization. Now, we talked about this kind of. It's the one that varies for each person. It's called achieving one's full potential. That's what it basically means. Now, your full potential could be in service. It could be in, I guess, in arguing for same sex marriage, right? I guess they kind of thought that, this is kind of like our cause, right? This is what we need to fight for, right? That could kind of be self actualization too. Trying to feel like, oh, I want to achieve my maximum potential in life, right? So I feel like if you meet all these different needs, you'll feel pretty fulfilled in life. And, if you're a child, you probably won't concern yourself much with esteem needs, right? Until you get really older, right? And you start going to college and so the needs keep going up over time. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think ages is something that we have to consider, right? Because of the fact that there's a distinction, right, between what we want and what we need, right? I might desire a lot of things, right? I want to. A lot of people might say they want a nice house, right? They want a nice car, they want a luxurious life, right? They want other people to like them, right? They want their appearance to be better. There's so many wants in the world, right? But there's some things that you need, right? Like for example, you can't live without food and water. Right? I guess we can already establish that baseline. You can't live without food and water. And if I would argue, I think I would argue that you can't live without company. You can't really live without the presence of friends or family or something like that to take care of you. Not really only take care of you, but to kind of keep you on track, right? So I feel like that's something that you can't live without, right? As you grow up, right, that kind of perspective changes, right? Because you understand society better because you have been interacting with it, right? For example, I think I could say that something that fulfills me when I was a child, right, was I like to get praise from other people. That fulfilled me as a child. I think that that's something that I was like, hey, look at me, look how smart I am, look how nice I am. I'm very prideful of that back then. But now I don't really get fulfillment off of that anymore because well, pride is something as we talked about in previous podcasts. Pride is something that really destroys you. Pride is something that sometimes hinders your growth, right? If you're being too prideful. Now I take fulfillment in things like my race, right? My nationality, right? I think that I am an Asian American, right? I'm very proud of that, and I take fulfillment in that. Right? So that's the idea I've been changing throughout the ages because of what I've seen with society and because of the ideas that I have developed. Right? I didn't let anyone else develop my fulfillment. I developed it on my own, which is the important part. You cannot let other people decide what your fulfillment will be. Right? Societal values should not be the sole influence on what your fulfillment should be. Meaning that your fulfillment does not necessarily have to be the same with others. Right? So that's kind of what my take on this is. This is kind of what my idea is. I don't know what you guys think about
I agree with your assertion, Nick. That also plays into the larger conversation of like nature versus nurture, right? At what point does our surroundings shape us, or at what point do our own individual personalities shape us, you know? So definitely when we're infants, right? I was actually writing an essay today about how mistakes change how important mistakes are in society. So when we're babies or infants, we don't really have any experience. And even when we grow up, we're usually isolated to our communities, to our neighborhoods, to our ethnicity, like you said, to our gender, right? And only through learning through other people's experiences are we able to grow as people. But that doesn't mean you should base your entire purpose, like Theo said, the top tier of what makes you fulfilled off of completely societal expectations. It's good to be a representative of your community, but it's important to be individualistic within whatever community you're within. So I agree with your assertion.
I would like to point out this really fascinating TED Talk, and it kind of like showed, I guess, three different lives that you can lead in terms of fulfillment. It's called the New Era of Positive Psychology. I forgot who did it, but he was pretty insightful. So there's something called the pleasant life. Now, this is accumulating as much positive emotion as possible, like happiness, maybe like pride, like self-esteem, not pride, and like, other positive emotion, right? And there's also something called the good life. Now, this is actually pretty interesting. It's like having a life in which time stops for you. Like you're enjoying something and then you enjoy it so much that you don't even keep track of the time. You know, that actually happens to me sometimes in video games. Like sometimes I'm playing for an hour, I think, but it's actually been like 3 hours that I've been playing for it, you know? So that's kind of like the other type. You know, when time stops for you, you're like enjoying it so much that, you know, you think that it doesn't stop, right? And there's one last life called the meaningful life. This is to know your highest strengths and use them in service in something larger than yourself. Now, this is like for those people who do charity and like, you know, good causes throughout the world, right? And I have to say, like, you know, all three lives are actually kind of what we all are, but the ones that actually kind of help you the most are more of the good life and the meaningful life. There's like studies been shown that the pleasant life, first of all, it's not really heritable. Like it's usually inherited, right? Like if you're less depressed, then you know most most likely that your children will be not as depressed. But like it's like pretty much only inheritable. It's really hard to do, right? Accumulate as much positive emotion in your life. And also as it kind of suggests, like it's kind of temporary, right? Like I may be happy one day, but then the next day, you know, I may be sad, right? But if you do something, I guess, meaningful, like you help other people, the emotion kind of keeps going on because you realize, oh, I've really done something, you know, in my community or in the world. I've made a difference. And that like keeps reminding you. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I definitely think that, you know, those those three outlines of life I don't think are necessarily um, completely isolated in the sense where somebody doesn't just live like the meaningful life or somebody doesn't just live the good life. You know, as you kind of brought up your example in like playing video games, like you know I don't think you always live life as if you're not paying attention to the time. I'm sure you you know keep a schedule, and I'm sure you you try to live a meaningful life as well. And it's so I don't think they are necessarily isolated from each other, but it is interesting to see how, you know, when you are putting, I guess when you are putting others first, or when you're trying to do something significant or meaningful with your life, with your time, that's when um, that's when you're most fulfilled. I guess in terms of what we're talking about, because you know when you're all you're doing is trying to seek like being happy. That's not really, I guess, something significant. Not to say that being happy is a bad thing, but rather only seeking like happiness in your life and um, trying to only feel happy emotions is not really what I'd say to be like a very powerful or meaningful kind of life, because you know, yes, it is good to be happy, but what does it mean to be happy? I think while it varies for people, I think, you know, doing something significant with your life, putting your time to good use, and that kind of goes back to um, you know, when you're not thinking about trying to do something, when you're not thinking about using your time wisely, that's when you stop feeling fulfilled, right? You feel fulfilled when you feel like you spent your time wisely, when you feel like what you're doing is either right or um, you know, what you're doing is right or what you're doing is meaningful. If you're helping someone, even if it isn't necessarily helping you, it's still fulfilling because it's meaningful to you.
I like Theo's category or like, whatever he researched for the categorization of the three different worlds, because as humans we do like to justify and try to understand why we do the things we do. And I also like Ezra's assertion on how everything's sort of interconnected, right? We can't solely live one of those three lives. We all kind of live a combination of it. And like as humans, we're very imperfect. So we're not going to experience happiness all the time, especially in when we have to integrate ourselves within other people's lives and stuff. There's going to be sacrifices, compromises, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? But it's not going to constitute everything in our favor all the time. And I feel like when you're talking about just trying to live happy, when we were trying to come up with topics for this talk, we were describing three different types of fulfillment for people, just overviews. Consumption, this could be through capitalistic means, like you want to just buy a lot of things. Like I like collecting records. That's something that I feel fulfillment in because I just like having records. Some people like games, some people just like consuming media, right? Some people just like going to watch and buy a movie ticket to go watch a movie. So that's one facet. Another facet that we described is achievement, which is sort of like your personal aspirations. That sort of relates to the pyramid as like the top point as well. What is your life's purpose? Especially, it can be for the other outside world, but it can be by yourself. Like some people want to uh, become a doctor, and that's their life's goal. Some people want to be a musician, and that's their life's goal. But those are, although may benefit others as a side effect, is mostly for personal fulfillment. And then the last one is service. So service meaning that you get fulfillment from helping other people and through charity and stuff like that. Like Theo said, I think it's the third down from the top where you have family, friends, relationships on the pyramid. I just wanted to ask you guys personally, where do those three things hierarchically rank for you?
Um, I think for me, the three things, ranking wise, I think sometimes they bleed into each other, in my opinion. It's not if something like, oh yeah, this is just bottom of the pyramid, top of the pyramid, right? They kind of blend into each other, right? They're not. In the analogy I would use is, they're not like water and oil, right? They're not separate. Right? They're not just having some kind of distinct layer in the middle, right? They kind of go into each other. But with that being said, I think if you ask me, I think I lean towards a little more towards. I think sometimes for me, charity is a lot more. Just because of the way that I believe, I think charity for me it brings me the most fulfillment. Because sometimes I think physical things, right, only last temporarily. They only give you only a certain degree, right? They only benefit you, right? That's kind of the thing about it. Sometimes I think fulfillment is better when it's shared with others, right? If you can, help others along the way, I think that's probably the greatest fulfillment in my opinion. So yeah, that's kind of how I see it. I think capitalistically, yes, I think I still enjoy those things. Never said I don't enjoy them. It's just for me, the more enjoyment still comes from the fact that I get to share with other people, right? I get to help others kind of fulfill their lives as well. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I would pretty much agree with Nick on like, sometimes one of them is like more fulfilling than another in some ways, right? Like, I don't know for example, but sometimes I think that like doing something for yourself is maybe a little bit more fulfilling than doing something for other people, especially if they don't thank you or like they kind of, I guess, they're not super grateful for it. It's kind of hard to feel, really fulfilled from that. But in general, though, I do appreciate, service because I think that doing stuff for other people is probably like one of the greatest things, and it gives this like distinct positive emotion. I don't feel that when I, achieve something in life or like when I, you know, I guess consume, video games or like other things that make me happy. There's like a distinct emotion that comes with helping people. I'm not super, um, I guess I can't really describe it.
I think it's interesting to think about like the hierarchy. I think if I were to use an analogy, it's kind of like consumption is like kind of eating food and like feeling like eating something tasty. Achievement might be like, oh, you're trying to lose weight so you don't eat the food, and service is kind of giving that food to someone else because like they either need it or you just want to give it to them. I think all of those have their pros and cons, um, and it's not like one is always necessarily better than the other. Um, but generally, like Nick and Theo said, I think service um, should be an important part. Whether or not it's your most valuable is, I believe, up to your perspective and your ultimate perspective on life. But serving people, being maybe not benevolent may not be the right word, but being being able to recognize other people's needs and being able to put yourself aside for the needs of others is an important skill to have, and is something that should be prioritized. Um, in your life, if you have the means to do so. Obviously, if you're like in poverty, then it might not take as high priority because obviously you don't have the means to serve others. But at the same time, it shouldn't be like you shouldn't be out for your own gain, especially if it involves harming others, because that's kind of paradoxical. That's the opposite of fulfillment.
I would agree with your assertion, Ezra. I think that fulfillment definitely it's more of a spectrum thing for people. It's not a white and black thing. So, and like what Theo is saying, how sometimes it's hard to feel fulfillment when it comes to helping other people. I've heard a lot of people say when you do acts of service and stuff like that, it's still inherently selfish because you're getting the gratification, whether it's instead of you purely getting the gratification from helping someone else. But then again, that's how you get the gratification. So it's sort of like a conundrum there. But another question I wanted to ask you guys is what are some things that you find extremely unfulfilling in your life that you still do? And how do those actions affect your mindset and such?
Yeah, I think with that being said, I think that's probably a good place to end it off. I think we talked about a lot
Wait,
about fulfillment. We hope that of course, you guys learned a lot about it from what we talked about. Reflected in your own lives. And yeah, again, if you guys want, we have our Instagram links down below. We also have our website down below. Ezra, I don't know if you want to talk about the small group again, or you think you're
I
good.
think it's fine.
Okay, all right.
You can
Again,
just end
thank
it.
you, Josh, for coming. That was very comprehensive and that was very thought out. We really enjoyed what you have to bring to the table, and we look forward for having you again next time.
Thank you for hosting.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for watching. I guess we will see you next week. Take care, guys.